We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we are going to go back and continue our review / exposure of Dr. George M. Lamsa's translation of the Syriac Eastern Peshitta into the nearest English equivalent. He was a native-born Syrian translator who spoke Aramaic, of course, and was awarded a doctorate by the Church of the East, Apostolic Church of the East, for his work. They really appreciated it. So we're going back because due to the comments that we received from certain people, we reading from those original Tav Asherit, Lishana Tikis Prayer, Sacred Scribe, Tongue of God, or Language of God texts, the Brita in the Aramaic, or Genesis in English, saw that in the genealogy of Noah, the lineage of Noah, him having 3 sons who had 3 wives who obviously had children, and to them were born children who had children, and then they had descendants, these being Put, Cam or Cam, Mizraim, and Canaan, one of which Mizraim became the Egyptians over a period of time. They eventually became these Egyptians. So we believe that the word Cam or Cam in these original texts was the actual name of one of the sons of Noah, or descendants of Noah, who had sons and daughters who had descendants, etc. Not Ham as found in your modern Americanized English Bible versions. So we felt, okay, if we made a mistake, we apologize for that to these people. But then we just suddenly realized maybe we didn't. Because if they were descendants of Ham, then they would have been Hamites, as detailed in the scriptures. These people of Ham were called Hamites, and from other sources that we came across, possibly this book. So we're looking at, in this particular book, on page 29 of Genesis, where it says, Ham, in the self-same day entered Noah, and Shem, and Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, into the ark. Genesis 7:13. Ham, in the Aramaic Cam, or Cam, is derived from the Aramaic word kahoma, heat. In Western Aramaic and Arabic, the K and the H, K, becomes H, so it's Homer, or Homer. Hence, Ham is pronounced and written as Ham, or Cam is written as Ham. Okay, so we didn't realise that. So we make apologies for that to those particular people that know who they are. All the 3 sons of Noah were of the same colour, white. Not African black, or Chinese, or Filipino. They were white, and all of them were living in Beth Narin, or Bet Narin, Mesopotamia. That's where Victor N. Alexander comes from, the translator of the Tav Asherit, the Lishana Tikis Prayer, and the New Testament Galilean Aramaic manuscripts from the Apostolic Church of the East that we usually bring you in video format from his translation project. va.com is website, which is down, but we revived it. So all the 3 sons of Noah were of the same colour, white, and all of them were living in Bet Narin, Mesopotamia. None of them migrated from his homeland to a far-off land. Assyria was large enough and fertile enough for all 3 men. That's why it was called the Fertile Crescent, right? And their families and flocks to dwell in. Then again, in those early days, roads were unknown, and forests were infested with snakes and wild animals. The three sons of Noah divided the land in which they were living among themselves. Each one of them started grazing in a different direction. Japheth went northward, Shem being the firstborn, or the eldest, so who had been the heir, the head, the chief to be, stayed home in Assyria. And Ham went southward, grazing and multiplying. This ancient custom still prevails. It still happens today, apparently. When a large tribe splits, its segments more move in different directions. As the tribes continued to migrate, they multiplied and again divided and started seeking new grazing lands. As the tribe of Ham, or the Hamites, see, that's where we came across the idea. Yeah, if they're of Ham, they're Hamites. So maybe the Kemites were the same people. They migrated southward. They found more favourable grazing conditions and water, and the climate was warmer. So, if the Hamites were the Kemites, or the Kemites, or the Kemetans, or these ancient Egyptians, forerunners to the Egyptians, and this particular translator says they were white, the three sons were white, then somewhere along the way they became black. Logic, common sense, in reality, according to this translation, right? That's what it says. So, for this specific moment, that's what it is. It's not according to us, it's according to what's written in this book, translated by George M. Lamsa. As the tribes continued to migrate, they multiplied and again divided and started seeking new grazing lands. As the tribe of Ham, or the Hamites, migrated southward, they found more favourable grazing conditions and water, and the climate was warmer. So us and our commentators are in agreement. It took many centuries before the descendants of Ham reached the hot regions of Africa. So, many centuries before they got there, right? Where, because of the climatic conditions, their skin became dark. They didn't necessarily become African black, or black African, right? Keep that in mind. They had a darker hue, a tan or a darker hue. Their bodies created pigments to protect their skins from the strong and penetrating sun rays. So there's you could say, an evolution there, right? Over time, they evolved, their skin evolved. Their bodies created pigments to protect their skins from the strong and penetrating sun rays. This is also true of the bears. In warm climates, bears are dark, while in the Arctic they are white. Today, the Ethiopians are called Amharic, the scorched people. This is because they are dark or burned with the sun's rays. Remember Alexander the Great went to Africa and he saw all these black faces. He says, oh gosh, it's like they've been touched by the sun. Raisins touched by the sun, supposedly. And he wasn't being racist, he was just saying, wow. He'd heard of black people, but he'd never seen them in great numbers. And then he saw them, and wow, he says, they're like touched by the sun's rays, like raisins touched by the sun, etc. Some Bible teachers wrongly believe that it was because of the curse of Ham. That would be the Mormons. Yes, we had a American Mormon elder come to the door and say, to one of our older people, yeah, it's because Adam sinned and he got turned black. That's his curse. Okay, so that was actually wrong. Again, some Bible teachers wrongly believe that it was because of the curse that Ham turned black. Genesis 9:25. No curse can change that colour of man which was given to him by his Creator, but heat and cold can cause changes in order to offer man protection. Unfortunately, in the past, all weak and backward people who were enslaved by stronger races were supposed to be the accursed ones and their masters the blessed ones. It was the climate which created the black colour and not the curse. When one travels from the north to the south towards Africa, one can notice the colour of the people changing gradually. For example, the Arabs in the north are lighter than the Arabs in the south, and the southern Arabs are much lighter than Arabs and other races in Africa. This is also true of the Teutonic people, such as Germans, British, Swedish, and especially Norwegians. They are very white, simply because the sun's rays in the north are weak and indirect. Frenchmen who live in southern France are darker than those in the north. This is also true of the Italians. The flood. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Genesis 7:18-20. The Aramaic word ara means the earth, a country, land, field, grounded region, soil, and the floor of a house. The term Jabal is used when speaking of the whole habitable earth or world as a whole. In the days of Noah, most of the parts of the world which we know today were unknown. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers was the only world which Noah and his people knew, because they hadn't ventured out, right? Logic, common sense, reality. Not for many centuries were Palestine and other westward lands inhabited. This took place only after the dispersion and the divisions of languages. Genesis 11:1-6. That would be the Tower of Babel, where they were given multiple languages and then scattered by God, right? The term Shamayah, heaven, also means skies. No doubt the hills in the region where Noah made the ark were covered with water by the flood. The deluge was so great that it lasted 40 days and 40 nights. The Tigris and Zab rivers flooded all the inhabited region. The mountains under all the heaven would certainly not include the Himalayas. Had the water risen 15 cubits above the earth's highest mountains, the surface of the ocean would have risen 30,000 feet above its present level. If this was the case, the water could not have receded in 150 days. There would have been no place for it to flow. A similar phrase appears in the book of Numbers, when Balak, king of Moab, sent messages to Balaam, the son of Beor. He said, "Behold, there is a people come out from Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth." Numbers 22:5. Face of the earth in this instant means the face of the ground near the land of Moab. The word translated earth is Ara. The story of the building of the ark is true, but both pitch and gopher wood are found in Assyria. Okay, we have looked at Irving Finkel's, the British curator, English curator. It's like he's upset all the time, but he's quite humorous. Long Santa Claus beard. He actually had translated the Babylonian cuneiform text and found that some god, after he found out one of those a pantheon of gods, one particular god, little g, when he found out that the so said Anunnaki or the gods that supposedly created these hybrids from the Neanderthals or these Cro-Magnons or whatever, and made these slave workers to get the gold under the earth, to save their dying planet, all that sort of mythical stuff. We're going to, they got sick of them making noise and all that sort of stuff, being rebellious and not doing as they're told, all that sort of stuff. So they decided, we're going to fly away, and as we fly away, we're going to zap the North and South Pole, or the two poles, polar ice caps, and melt them, and then that will flood the whole world and kill everybody, and who cares, we're out of here, right? But this particular guy loved these created beings, so he told them, here's some plans. This person, this god with a little g, found a person who was a boat builder, had enough intelligence to build a boat, and said, hey, build this and survive and live on. Okay? And that's what they did. And it was round. It's an oracle. It's like the rubber tie you used to use, or you might have used when you were a kid. Your parents gave it to you. Here, hop in the middle of this, so if you float out, well, you're not going to drown, right? The black rubber tire or floater, right? Remember, we had one of those, and we floated out too far out to sea, and my mother had to come and get me, because I think probably only about 9 or something like that. It was going out to sea. Okay, so the story of the building of the ark is true. Both pitch and gopher wood are found in Assyria. Indeed, if all the water in the earth's atmosphere were to fall upon the earth at once, the surface of the ocean would not rise more than a few inches. Of course, God can do anything, but we must realize the early men had a smaller world. Thus, when we think of Noah, we must understand the small world in which he lived. It was actually one giant landmass called Pangaea, according to the Israeli tourist board in Israeli Hebrew, as in the video, detailed in the video that we can leave as a end screen to verify that. It was one giant landmass before the tectonic plates shifted and then separated, and rivers were and oceans and that came in between those geographical locations. Indeed, if all the water in the Earth's atmosphere were to fall upon the Earth at once, the surface of the ocean would not rise more than a few inches. Of course, God can do anything, but we must realise the early men had a smaller world. Thus, when we think of Noah, we must understand the small world in which he lived. And apparently, according to what we came across, the supposedly giants or Nephilim, I'm not too sure about if it's in the Jewish one where they're 100 feet tall or they're 400 feet tall, and in the Arabic they were like either 400 or 100 feet tall. And when the flood came, they just basically stood up tall, and the water only came up to their nostrils, so that's why they were in the scriptures later on the earth later on. But we found when you translate the word Nephilim, it does not mean Anunnaki, spaceship, UFOs, green men, little green men, going nanu, etc. It actually means giants or ogres. Go do your research. The fact that the dove brought an olive branch proves that some of the mountains were not covered. No olive trees could have survived 150 days under the salty seawater. There are many olive trees in northern Mesopotamia or Iraq. And we have a book here which verifies that it wasn't a global flood, it was a regional flood only. We've said this a couple of times or more in our videos. This book, The Timetables of History, the new third revised edition, the world famous reference that tells who did what when from 4500 BC to the present day, now updated for the 1990s. It's quite an old book. It's the third edition. A horizontal linkage of people and events by Bernard Grun, based upon Werner Stein's Culture Far plan. Okay, and it's on page 3, column G, and it says disastrous floods in Mesopotamian region. Okay, I think if we recall rightly, the Aramaic speaking translator filmmaker Victor and Alexander actually suggested somewhere that same statement. Okay, and then you have the Egyptian flood myth where the Nile flowed over and a king or pharaoh called Nut built this boat and he saved animals and his people until the flood went down. And supposedly they found it in one of those pyramids, the complete boat. It should be on YouTube somewhere. We just came across it quite a while back. Mountains of Kadu, and the ark rested in the 7th month on the 7th day on the month upon the mountain of Ararat, or Ararat. Genesis 8:4. The Eastern text reads Torai Kadu, the mountains of Kadu, Kurdistan. This chain of mountains started from the northern Mesopotamian and This chain of mountains starts from the northern Mesopotamian and reaches as far as the Armenian border near the Taurus range. Mount Ararat is the highest mountain in the whole range of mountains in Kurdistan and Armenia. Apparently the name Ararat is used by the translators of the Bible simply because the whole chain is identified with Ararat. Apparently the ark rested on one of the lower mountains east or west of the Tigris, near the small river Zab, and not upon Mount Ararat itself. Yeah, that's what we read about a week ago, that everyone says, oh, it was on top of this mountain, right on the top there, and all this sort of stuff, so much cubic feet up and all this sort of stuff. But apparently this Jewish text or other actually says it was on a flatter plain. So it would have been in that range, but on a flatter level. So if these people have found it today, you see it on video, that's it. It's on a flatter plane. If it's the original Ark of Noah, right? The original Ark. Apparently the Ark rested on one of the lower mountains east or west of the Tigris, near the small river Zab, and not upon Mount Ararat itself. Mount Ararat is about 18,000 feet high and difficult to descend from its peak. How would Noah have brought down such animals as elephants, camels, and other large animals when even the expert mountain climber cannot ascend or descend Ararat without ropes? So, yeah, you'd have to have these pulleys, these ropes, etc., to get these big ass elephants from the top of the mountain down to the bottom, right? Near impossible, according to this. There is no reason why God should have caused the ark to rest on the peak of such a high and cold mountain, where neither people nor animals could descend without danger of disaster. God can do anything, but he would not do something that would work against his purpose of saving Noah and his family. Yeah, why put him up on the highest peak, freeze to death? It's like, they're meant to carry on and replenish the earth. Oops, I've actually put them in the wrong place and they've frozen to death. Oh, jeez. Anyway, moving on. Mount Ararat, because of its height, was known to Westerners, but the mountains in Iraq where the ark was built were unknown. Olives not destroyed. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. Genesis 8:11. Had the whole world been covered with water, the trees would have perished. The ocean water would have mixed with the fresh water, and the topsoil would have been destroyed. And had Mount Ararat been covered, from where would the dove have found the branch with the green leaf? No olive trees grow in Armenia, but olives grow in Mesopotamia. Therefore, the ark must have rested upon one of the mountains north of the region where Noah was living, and the olive branch was picked up from a higher region where olives were not covered with water. Of course, God could have destroyed the entire globe if he had wanted to. So we, using our logic and common sense, reason and reality, have done the research and looked at the scientific aspect of a great total whole global flood or world flood, which probably would have been the Ice Age. Everything starts to get frozen over. The Bering Strait has a big ice wall, so no one can cross that. And then something from outer space, like a giant meteor or asteroid, smacks into the earth, hits the sea, causes a great tidal wave, which then causes earthquakes, volcanoes to erupt, and drowns the whole world, because the north and south polar caps were melted or something like that, right? So that's a good valid reason for an entire world flood. Okay. Seasons. Here's one about seasons. Animals given for food. You can eat them for a certain time. You can only use their byproducts. It is said that the animals which thrive on the grass are stronger than the wild beasts which live on meat. Eating of blood forbidden. For many centuries the Hebrews thought that life was centered in the blood. 4 centuries after Abraham, blood was forbidden to be eaten as food by an ordinance of Moses, or a command of Moses. Moreover, you shall eat no manner of blood. Leviticus 7:26. That is why atonement was done with blood. The sinner was cleansed by means of the blood of animals offered on his behalf, usually on the first of every month. The Day of Atonement. It wasn't a Sabbath, but it was a sign of the start of a new month. That is why the atonement was done with blood. The sinner was cleansed by means of the blood of animals offered on his behalf. They were sprinkled with, alright. For if the blood of bulls and of goats and ashes of a heifer, probably a red one, sprinkling the unclean sanctifieth to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ? Hebrew 9:13-14. Pagans and some Christians eat blood, but the Jews still uphold the Mosaic ordinance or commands and abstain from eating meat with the blood. They eat kosher, that is clean meat without blood. The animals are slaughtered traditionally, humanely, same as the Islam animals they use for meat, because they're basically following the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, and doing their own thing, right? But they still, it basically originates from there. Pagans and some Christians eat blood, but the Jews still uphold the Mosaic ordinance and abstain from eating meat with the blood. They are kosher, there's clean meat, they eat clean meat without blood. The Mosaic ordinance was based on this command of God in Genesis 9:4. And then he's got vengeance, Meshech, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog, and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshech and Tiras. Meshech or Meshach evidently refers to what is now Moscow, the capital of Russia. The Israelites, like the Assyrians, the Chaldeans and the Persians, knew about other races about them and around them, and those who were far off. The Assyrians had conquered what is known as ancient Armenia and Georgia and other lands adjacent to Russia and the Caspian Sea. For example, Cathay, China, is mentioned in Numbers 24:24 and in many of the books of the prophets. In the 8th century BC, some of the captives from the land of Israel were settled in Iran, ancient Persia, Media, Afghanistan and other lands of the Middle East or the Near East. No doubt some of them fled to India, China and Russia. It was during this period that the Israelites knew of these far-off races. Then again, the Arameans and the Chaldeans traded with many of the eastern races. Their ships navigated many seas. Even today there are large Jewish colonies in many parts of Russia, the Near East, Middle East and the Far East. There are also Jews of Indian origin who were converted by the early Jewish settlers in India. Gomer means Germany, Magog means Mongolia, Madai means Media, Persia, Javan, Greece and Tubal-Liski. See Ezekiel 27:13 and 32:26. Well, you can have a look at the genealogies in Genesis. It should tell you there. The Tab Eshet, or the Aramaic manuscripts from 800 BCE, hand copied by scribes and monks, actually do detail that in the genealogical list and the footnotes. Gentiles. The Aramaic term Ami, Gentiles, is used with various meanings. Ami in Aramaic means kindred, races or peoples. The three sons of Noah were born of the same father and mother, and all of them and their immediate children spoke the same language. But after the dispersion, the descendants of the three sons of Noah scattered northward, southward and eastward, and consequently new tribes and new languages were born. The descendants of Laban, Lot, Ishmael, Esau, Edom, and other kindred people were called Gentiles by the Hebrews. Many of these people, who were the direct descendants of Abraham, revered the Lord God of Israel, but in the course of time most of them sank into paganism. For example, Balaam was a Gentile prophet, but he revered the Lord God, the creator of heaven and earth. Numbers 27:7-14. Laban, the Aramean, also feared the Lord. The Hebrew prophets predicted that Messiah would bring the Gentiles to God, Isaiah 11:10, and be a light to lighten the Gentiles, Luke 2:32. This term Ammi, Gentiles, should not be confused with pagans and Greeks. Eric. The Aramaic reads Erek, Iraq, and Akkad instead of Akkad. These kingdoms were all a part of ancient Assyria and Babylon. In the olden days, large fortified cities were known as kingdoms. This is why a king of Assyria, Babylonia, or Iran, Persia, was known as a king of kings. The name of Assyria was changed from Padam Aram to Assyria, and later to Mesopotamia. Seemingly the Arabs had retained the ancient name of the region, Iraq. Such peoples as the Sumerians and Akkadians are not mentioned in the Bible. These names were introduced by Western scholars, yet the Bible writers have covered all other peoples. Akkad and Shammah are the names of regions in Mesopotamia. Well, it does, maybe in footnotes, indicate that these men went to Sumer or Sinai, right? And it goes on about Amorah, not Gomorrah. Eber and Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber, or Heber, and probably in your modern Americanized English versions. Genesis 10:24. The term Hebrews is derived from the Aramaic word Abba, or A-W-E, A-W-E-R. Okay, in this case, the term Hebrews is derived from the Aramaic word Abba, to cross over. Okay, in Victor Alexander's translation of the Peshitta, it says A-W-E-R. It's probably a different dialect. Okay, this is Syriac, his is the Aramaic, probably a different dialect. Type ancient one, right? Which means to cross over. That is the lands of the west side of the river Euphrates. Eber was a great grandson of Shem, 2235 BC. In Numbers 24:24, Eber is mentioned as a nation. The Hebrews, some of the descendants of Eber, remained in Haran and other places west of Assyria. Eber was the father of the Hebrews. Well, according to Victor N. Alexander's translation, it was Arpachshad, or this guy here, Arphaxad. Okay, he was known as the father of the Hebrews, but Eber, possibly the descendants of Awer, or this Abba. Yeah, there's a slight difference there. There's a little difference there. Okay, one is the forefather, considered the forefather, the other one is Eber, born of whoever. Division of languages, and the whole world was of one language and one speech. You could probably put that difference below the video, but we suggest go and look at our video, Genesis Made Simple. It's probably second or third video which covers Peshitta or Genesis 5 to 8, or maybe 6 to 9, something like that. Have a look at the scriptures mentioning Abraham when he was in Ur of Chaldea, and he's told by God to pack up his family, his wife, his nephew Lot, etc., and go to this other land. And it should have like a explanation and a footnote underneath saying it's A-W-E-R. Arpachshad was considered the father of the Hebrews. Probably the forefather. That's probably what it means. The division of languages, and the whole world was of one language and one speech. Genesis 11:1. Undoubtedly, the primitive people who lived in the land of Shinar spoke one tongue, the first human language. The division of languages was due to the dispersion of the people from Mesopotamia. It was a slow process. New languages cannot be learned in a day or even in a year. It takes centuries before a new language is born or a new speech replaces an old speech. Owing to the height of the Tower of Babylon, the builders were unable to hear one another. At that time, elevators, telephones, and other means of communication were unknown. The whole project of building such a high tower in Babylon was done by hand. When a mason called for bricks, they sent him mortar. When he asked for mortar, they sent him timber. The higher the building grew, the more difficult, confusing, and hopeless became the task of the builders. And when the builders realized that the heavens were not over the clouds and could not be reached, they abandoned the project and started to disperse in different directions. In biblical days, heavens were supposed to be a few miles above the earth. This concept still prevails among many primitive people who lack the knowledge of astronomy. They believe that God's abode is above the clouds. The Bible tells us that the Lord came down in the clouds. Numbers 11:25. God was not afraid of man, as the biblical text may indicate. He knew the building of the tower was in vain, so he revealed to the builders that their task was an imposing one. The dispersion was due to the grazing situation and the population growth. Pastoral lands were divided among the tribes, and some of the tribes grazed southward, some northward, and others westward in search of new pastures. Every time a tribe grew up and became powerful, and its sheep and cattle increased, it divided itself into smaller tribes. These divisions and migrations continued for thousands of years until most of the face of the earth was inhabited. It was during the course of these migrations that the new dialects were formed, which later became distinct languages. At that early time, writing was unknown and commerce was in its infancy. The tribes were independent and self-supporting. Every tribe in the course of time incorporated new words into its dialect, which became a new speech. As new discoveries were made, new words were coined. This is also true in our day. For instance, American men and women who passed on 100 years ago, if they were to arise tomorrow, would find it difficult to converse with their descendants. They would hardly recognize any of our modern English words and idioms. Yes, English does have idioms. Even today, in the lands where illiteracy is predominant and where there is little social intercourse and commerce, people living a few miles from one another find it hard to understand the speech of one another. In some areas, every town has its own dialect. For instance, Arabic is one language, but it has numerous dialects. An Arab born and reared in the Arabian desert would find it difficult or even impossible to understand the Arabic language spoken in Tunis or Morocco. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that a lot of people, men gathered together, right, and found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Genesis 11:2. Mad Nika in Aramaic means the rising of the sun or east. So there is a scripture that comes to mind. There is a video also by Rabbi Reuven, a warning to the Jews, and we did do a video and we got told it was taken down and all this sort of stuff. I think we got a copyright strike for it, something like that, or some claim, whatever it was. It got taken down, but he was saying basically what we found in the Galilean Aramaic New Testament manuscripts translated into nearest English equivalent by Victor N. Alexander, of these people when the Euphrates dried up in a certain spot, not the whole thing, just a certain area. These people from the rising of the sun or the east came across it, right, and then entered into a place called Armageddon in Hebrew and so forth. And in the footnotes it says Berlin. So obviously it's talking about these peoples that came across and dwelt there in the 1920s and 30s, and the history goes from there. Okay. Mad Nika in Aramaic means the rising of the sun or the east. The sun rises from the east, and therefore Mad Nika metaphorically also means light, and light means truth. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. God is often called the light, and the sun is symbolic of God because it pours out three attributes: light, heat and colour. On the other hand, Ma'aba is derived from Irab, which means sun setting, darkness or west. In biblical days, therefore, people used the word for east to symbolise right direction, light, truth and guidance, and the word for west to symbolise darkness or going astray, far off from the light. They journeyed from the east means symbolically they strayed from the true path, that is, they forsook God. That is why the people were confused and continued to wander aimlessly from place to place. When they strayed from the true path, they were deceived by the material world on which they relied for guidance and security. When man loses the true way, he wanders after the imaginations of his own heart and confronts problems and difficulties which he fails to overcome or solve. Okay, and let's go down. So this is when God supposedly went down and confused these people building the tower, gave them multiple languages, and he scattered them. Let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Genesis 11:7. Emperors, kings, princes and high ecclesiastical authorities use the plural pronoun or the pronoun of respect when referring to themselves. We or us instead of I. This is because they are the representatives of the people. Ezra 4:18. Therefore, when God speaks of himself, the pronouns of respect, we and us, are used. The authors of the Bible believed in one God only, the God of heaven and the earth. The doctrine of the Trinity, or the triunity, three persons in one, was a new concept. Okay, this is the Trinity. See, there's a difference here between the triunity, the triune Godhead, and this Trinity concept, because it was a new concept, a Greek concept of God. The Hebrews throughout the centuries believed in one God, or one person. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And that's also what Muslims believe. It's they're monotheistic. Deuteronomy 6:4, Mark 12:29. The Israelites were admonished against having another God because the Lord their God, or besides the Israelites were admonished against having another God besides the Lord their God. The whole system of the Jewish religion is based on the unity of God, one God. And they stress it's a monotheistic God. There is no other. As does Islam. There's only one God, Allah. That's what they say. The Eastern Christians believe in one God with 3 attributes instead of 3 persons. Okay, 3 attributes. Okay, so that would mean that the third one, the Holy Ghost, the Ruach HaKodesh, is as in Victor N. Alexander's translation. It's not a he, it's not a it. Something to do with it's a masculine neuter or something like that. So this Holy Spirit is rather referred to as a she because she has that attribute of nurturing. Okay, only a woman with a child can nurture that child. Okay, man can look after it, change it, feed it, whatever, but he can't nurture it as well as she does. Okay, Abraham a blessing. The departure of Abraham from his land, Ur of Chaldee, was preordained by God. Abraham was to play a great part in the divine plan in the salvation of mankind. The divine promise was made before Abraham left his land and his kindred. The reward for Abraham's part was that he would become a great nation and a blessing to all the families of the earth. He was called the blessed of the Lord, Genesis 14:19. We see that God's plan was a universal kingdom, and Israel was simply an agent in this plan. Before Abraham left his people, all the people of the world were straying from the way of God, including many close kinsmen of Abraham. Thus God's plan was for all the world. The faith of Abraham was to embrace all the races and the peoples of the earth, and the law which was to be given to his descendants was to be a light to the Gentiles and the Jews. So they were that chosen nation by God to bring that light to all the non-Jews, non-Israelites, etc., i.e. the Gentiles and the rest of the world. The Gentiles of the rest of the world. So the law was to be given to his descendants and was to be a light to the Gentiles and the Jews, to the Gentiles as well as the Jews. Therefore Israel's mission is spiritual and not political. For many years the Hebrew government was under the divine guidance of God. All of this was leading to the coming of the Messiah and was to culminate in a messianic kingdom. The dominion of this kingdom was to be from sea to sea and from river Euphrates to the ends of the earth. This kingdom was to embrace all races and peoples in the world. Okay, it goes on about Abraham. Bread and wine and Melchizedek, Most High God, an oath 4 centuries, El Shaddai, Ishmael, and so forth. It's a very interesting book. It goes through every chapter. It's like this Bible we got. It's a giant King James. It's got a concordance, a glossary, a bibliography. It's got everything in there, right? Each chapter is explained. This is basically what this is. Very similar to that, or prior to that big version. A complement, you could say it's a complement as well. But this is from the Eastern aspect, the Eastern perspective, mindset, etc. Right? Whereas the King James, that big brick as, heavy as Bible is from the Old English, Middle English, today's Americanized English, and English perspective. As it's written in English, isn't it? Okay. It's not a New King James Version. It still has thee, thou, thy, where art thou, for Romeo, all that sort of stuff. Shakespeare speak. But it goes into great depth as well. Okay, we hope that you've enjoyed this video. We're going to leave it there. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments below the video, And we'll get back to you on those as soon as we can. And you go share this with everybody you know. In some, okay, thanks to our commentators or commenters on our channel for their contribution, like about ham, cam, etc. So, in some, basically, we have verified that these sons of Noah that come out of the ark were white. They went to some other area, hotter climate, and then they eventually, their skin, etc., evolved, and they went darker. So all this nonsense about, say, Pan-Africanism, etc., that the black man was created first, and all this sort of stuff. No, the white man, according to the supremacists, he was created first, all this sort of stuff. So he's more superior, all this rubbish. Yeah, totally wrong. Okay, so that's how it was. The original ancestors, these white Europeans, etc., went dark because they moved different climates, as we told everybody in different comment feedbacks to them. But they said no. They were African. No. Jesus was black. No. All this sort of stuff. Okay, we verified in some that Noah's 3 sons were actually white. Went to another area, and then because of the hot climate, their skin, etc., adapted, and they became darker. Okay, so again, if you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and give us a like, add your comments, and then go share this video with all your family, friends, and others.